Now imagine, if you will, you want to send flowers for your mom's birthday. You open a website, the page loads fast, the layout makes sense, and you quickly find your mom's favorite flowers. You pay and personalize the card with just a few clicks. If you need help, a real person gets back to you and quickly. The flowers are delivered to your mom on her birthday, much to her surprise and delight. That's what good customer experience feels like. And it's the minimum that customers have come to expect, with more and more options to choose from. And if something goes wrong along any step of the way, they have more and more outlets to complain. Tonight on Power Boardroom, we're speaking to MTN and Mr. D about how they're thinking about customer experience in a very competitive market and what's changing behind the scenes. We'll also hear from a business analyst where South African companies are getting it right and where there's still work to do. Let me introduce our guests tonight for the Power Boardroom discussion. We have in studio Thandeka Chabane, who's the MTN's head of client services, as well as Lungile Mnguni, who's a business analysis advocate and a senior business analyst. And then joining us on the line from Cape Town, we have Tumelo Mothapo, head of operations at Mr. D. You can join the conversation at any time on 0861 987 000 and 083 303 7093 for voice notes and WhatsApps. We'll also be running a poll on our X account. That's at PowerFM 987. You can vote in the poll or send us your comments about what we're discussing in studio. Thandeka and Lungile, welcome to Power Business. Thanks for joining us in studio. You're both wearing scarves. My neck feels exposed just looking at that. Thanks for coming in. And Tumelo, great to have you on the line from Cape Town. Thanks for joining us. Thandeka, let's start with you. You were so excited for this conversation about customer experience. It's not generally something people would associate with passion and with huge excitement. Why is that?
I think it's way overdue that we have this dialogue. And before I actually go into that response, I just want to say good evening to the listeners, and I am so excited about this topic. What I mean when we say we're way overdue about this topic, it is, yes, being discussed in the boardrooms, but now we're taking it beyond just being a KPI for a division. It's about how do we get to understand that it's the people, it's the value, it's each and every one of us in that organization that actually make customer experience work. And this is going to be an amazing ride, because when we get that right, that's going to be the new business revenue. That's actually going to make people want to come back, because people remember the experience rather than looking at something as a service that you delivered for me. So that's why, and that's how I see it.
Tumelo, to bring you in, how do you create a memorable customer experience, as we've just heard there from Thandeka, as Mr. D?
Good evening, Tehillah, and also Thandeka and Lungile in studio, and good evening to the listeners. So at Mr. D, we basically look at a perfect customer experience where we basically met the customer's expectation in terms of time. The customer received everything that they ordered, and if they go on to rate, they also rate us 4 or 5 stars out of 5. So that's basically what we deem a perfect experience that the customer had. And post that, also there's no exception that the customer basically experienced. So there's no missing item, there's no quality issues, and so on.
So based on that, what are some of the top complaints or challenges, and how do you tackle them? The missing items that you touched on.
Yeah, so some of the biggest complaints that we do get is missing items. That's the biggest complaint, where a customer ordered 5 items, but they only received, let's say, 3 or 4. Quality issues as well, given that a large component of our business delivers food, and food that is already prepared. So quality issues do creep in as well. And also instances where customers receive items that they didn't order. So let's say you ordered a Fanta orange, but you received a Coke or a Fanta. Those are some of the top issues that we face. And how we handle them, we've currently been on a journey of basically trying to reduce our resolution times. So we managed to scale our business over the last couple of years, but with scale also comes problems, unfortunately. So our resolution times have been increasing, but we've been working on an automation journey where we're able to resolve those issues instantly, particularly for customers that we deem we can be able to do that. So that has helped us improve our CSAT, our customer satisfaction score over the last couple of months. And if someone experiences that, they can go on the app in our help center, log a ticket, and they'll either be resolved automatically if they go through the automation flow, or they'll be resolved by a customer services agent with a credit into their wallet so they can be able to place their next order.
Thandeka, as we're listening to Tumelo, of course, customer experience, and it's now being called CX, has become so complex. But let's take it right down to the basics. I gave the example of ordering flowers online, but really the customer experience journey has always been with us for as long as we've actually had consumers and people selling. How did you first decide that you wanted to actually get involved with customer service and customer experience?
It's one of those things where, you know what it feels like when you walk into a brand or a store where you really want to get something and you walk in there and you're completely ignored. You don't even get eye contact from the individuals that are in the store. What is the likely chance you're going to walk out and no matter what, you're not going to go back into that store to purchase what you want? And so I found myself in a situation where that really mattered to me. And I'm very passionate about people and understanding how the experience at the end of the day is the reason a customer actually wants to remain loyal with you. How the experience, their last experience, is what they actually assess you on. So irrespective of the service that you deliver, if that experience at the end of the day is terrible, they won't even tolerate the fact that you gave them the incorrect Fanta. Whereas if that experience is a good memory and it's uplifting, they will come back to actually purchase from you. So in this role and function, it was about how do you look at the value chain and you look at all the pieces that takes the agent, look at how complex it is and the effort it is for them to resolve a customer issue. You take the service, you look at the tools and the enablers to allow them to do their job. But most importantly, how do you empower the guy at the end in front of the customer to make that customer feel valued? What is that emotion? And to do that means every single person in the business is a critical piece of that puzzle, because from the moment I walk in that door until I've made the purchase and I walk out, every element is a contribution to the experience. So the fact that my flowers, my food arrives in the manner that it does, it's taken a human element to do that, a human empathy element to do that. That's enabled by the enablers and the technology in the background. But the effort to do it is the critical thing that is what the customer is left with.
Lungile, you've been nodding along at several touch points throughout this conversation. Did you want to add anything to Tumelo or Thandeka's points?
Yes, and thank you very much for having me, and good evening to your listeners as well and to the panelists. I think really what Tumelo was really explaining there, right, it touches on a lot of some of the blind spots, and I think Thandeka has also added to that. Some of the blind spots that we are seeing within the customer experience and also within the organizations, where Thandeka spoke of a value chain, right? Before the product gets to the customer, it goes through different touch points. And most of the time, we think customer experience has to do with just one touch point. And that's where I am seeing a lot of internal processes, not aligning with the value chain, whereby customer experience actually touches on all the touch points. Because to your example, where we're talking about delivering of flowers, it didn't just get to a point whereby my flowers are here, my mom's flowers are here, but it actually started with the person who received that order, who received that request. Did they take it with the utmost excitement and acknowledgement that this is going to be an end product going to a customer who will also just value that customer experience? So really, it touches to all the value chains points, and that's what will make a great customer experience. Because also with customer experience, it's colleague experience, which now talks to the internal processes as well.
Very complex, and there are so many different processes running at once. It's so important, of course, for a business, and you spoke about this as really being it will define the future of businesses. Talk about some of those complex processes that have to be in place in order to completely define a company's revenue.
So one of the critical thing is that you've got to look at is to look at the customer journeys. So you've got to kind of understand that value chain from the moment I actually visually see, whether it's on a TV, on radio, doesn't matter which touch points. How do I create ease for interaction with that thing that I'm visually seeing, so that I get to the point where I purchase. So it's about looking at that journeys on your I join and I help and I support, and really breaking those down to what does good look like? What does excellence look like? What does ease look like? What puts the control in the agent's hands, in the customer's hands? How do I create transparency so that your next action and transaction is seamless? It feels that way. I don't think about it. And when I walk away, I actually feel so empowered. So when you look at customer journeys, it's not a process. It's a journey. It's what is that experience I want to invoke at that point in time? What is the process? What is the people element? What are the tools that are needed so that I can evoke that particular reaction at that point in time that the customer walks away from? How do I make sure that all these pieces are joining? And the big thing that we haven't really discussed is over time, what happens as you said, customer experience is something that's been existing. But over time, what happens is we layer one solution on top of another enabler on top of another technology on top of another, not realizing that to simplify something and to go back to basics is really what we need to do to create that ease, because the less complex something is, the more in control I feel of it. And so when we look at processes and we look at enablers and we look at tools and we look at routing and we look at how do I make sure that I offer you the best solution for what you need at that point in time, it allows us to harness the value of the agent's role, the person, the empathy, the sympathy, to really understand you so that when you are finished with that interaction, you want to spend more, you want to come back. And that's why, as you said, it is the next revenue generating differentiator, because when your last transaction and interaction was so phenomenal, spending and how much you spend becomes actually non-existent. It's your experience, even down to something as simple as a smile. Haven't you found yourself often when you walk into a store, it doesn't matter which store, and you get a smile? I mean, Tumelo, when Mr. D delivers, if the driver who's delivering is in a bad mood, I can guarantee even after I've taken my meal, it is going to influence. And so, when you and I were chatting just offline, you were mentioning that even those elements are so critical to making that customer experience so important that it's not just the back end component of it. It's also the human element in the front that engages with the customer that one has to really look at to make it work.
Tumelo, I'm actually old enough to remember when before the acquisition, Mr. Delivery, we had to call and call a phone number. Yes, we actually used our phones for that, and pizza would come to our door. And so Mr. D, of course, has undertaken a massive change since those days. Never have to actually interact with a human until, as Thandeka mentioned, it's dropped at your door. How have you managed those various stages to put ease into the process?
So, just reflecting back then, I think the business was fairly simple, if I should put it that way, from a running perspective. So you place a phone call, you've got a booklet, you indicate what you want, and then that basically comes to your house in a couple of minutes. Integrating technology into this has obviously made it far more complex on the back end than what you actually experience on the front end. And if I look at the journey that we've underwent, I joined Mr. D back in 2019. I could pretty much understand everything that went into the app. But fast forward to now with AI, hyper-personalization, things like semantic search, hyper-localization, and all of those things, it's actually become far more complex. But I think the beauty about it is that everything that has come along on the journey has actually made us understand the customer a little bit more. And looking at this from a data lens, we actually now beginning to understand what customers actually want and using that to improve the customer's experience in the app. So now if you get into the app, we understand your order history, we understand what to surface to you, we understand what's important to you, your ordering history, your ordering pattern, and what to propose to you at a particular point in time. So I think coming from the old days where you used to order from a booklet and a phone call to where we are right now, we're at a much better place where we can actually speak directly to customers' needs and meet whatever it is that they're looking for at this point in time. Also looking into the fact that we've diversified just from food, not only delivering food anymore, but we're delivering pick and pay groceries. We're delivering other items that are not food, like toys, pet food, and so on and so forth.
So, of course, that makes everything more complex. Lungile, and of course, data is the new gold, and I think by now everyone knows that. So how important do you find data being used in companies that are actually able to harness their full CX experience?
It's very, very important. It's quite critical because what we are seeing mostly in the market, and I mean across industries, is that we are making data-driven decisions, right? And these will inform what Tumelo was alluding to right now, that we are therefore able to start filtering and offering our customers those personalized customer services, personalized customer products. So this just speaks to how important data is in understanding our customers. I think Thandeka touched on understanding, mapping a customer journey. This allows us to actually go through or be in a customer's visual point of what is it that happens throughout the journey of them trying to purchase or trying to require a service. So really, with data, and most importantly, accurate data, we are able therefore to produce or to offer our customers personalized and more specific customer products. And this is actually contributing positively to the whole customer experience.
Thandeka, you're nodding emphatically about data, and I know that you really love data, which is not something that everyone would share, but it's definitely an important part of the job.
Most definitely. The data is so rich. And with telcos, there's so much data that we've collated that tells you about the customer, their last interaction, their last transaction, how they make their decisions. And when that data is harnessed correctly to create the ease, to create the solution for the customer, phenomenal things happen. And we have seen it, as I mentioned in my area where we look at large enterprises and we do service management, for large corporates. When you get that data right to understand that customers need, and you actually pair them up with the right kind of human who understands the value and the technology, and you take that data and you then look at your operations backends and you give them the right tools and they have that at their hands, customers start thinking that they are the most intelligent human beings that existed with the most amazing heart. And you see that in the comments that they send, that they write to say, wow, this is an amazing individual. Please note them, value them. But it's you've given them the right support, the right tools, but also given them power to use their self-empathy to understand who they're servicing. And so in return, it delivers return on investment, where that customer actually turns around and says, you know what, I'm going to renew with you and I'm going to double what I was doing because the guy I was interacting with or the girl actually made a difference. So it actually becomes, oh, wow, I absolutely love Lungile. And because I love Lungile, I want to keep her. I'm going to renew. So when you understand those golden thread and you understand the combination of that data, using it to empower everybody in that value chain, as Lungile says. So everybody understanding that data, harnessing it, using it both in the human element, in the processes, in the tools, in the routing, in that whole entire architecture, the magic happens. So that's why I love data.
Yeah, I think exactly what you are saying, the stats are actually attest to that. You know, we are seeing that about 91% of South African consumers, they actually consider the customer experience to be very important. And this is based on the feedback, right, that they are giving on surveys and post interactions when they are actually interacting with different apps, and also just giving feedback in terms of the customer service. And it also shows that 84% of South Africans says that customer experience matters as much as the actual product itself. So exactly what you are alluding to there, Thandeka, it just goes to show how important the whole value chain, right, is contributing to the end factor, and the stats are also attesting to that.
Very interesting that I found that such a large percentage of people find it just as important as the product itself.
Yep.
Wow.
If not more.
Yeah. So it's really crucial that companies get this right. I'm interested, Lungile, of course, there's so many different ways that big companies like MTN or Mr. D are able to infuse CX across every part of the journey. How do small companies do that?
So I really think that customer insights, right, understanding your customer, and I think this is where most of us as analysts come in. You know, you've got data analysts and also business analysts, where they get to understand the customer need. No matter the size of your organization or your company, when you understand customer needs, you are able to actually design and deliver what is actually specific to the customer need. And I see this in the industry where we are so misaligned in terms of wanting to deliver the end product and letting go or not really focusing on the complete customer experience journey. So when you have a small company or a business, it's important how you interact with your customers. And nowadays, we've got AI that can be utilized in order to understand and have algorithms running at the back. And also, there is just quite a number of opportunities when it comes to social media. You know, customers are giving reviews as to, you know, I was at this salon, like literally right now, even my nail technician gets reviews, you know, as to how her nail skills are and so forth. So it's very important to have that communication and interactive communication with your customers. Allow customers to give you feedback and utilize that to actually produce or plan ahead for what's next. So it doesn't really matter so much. Yes, with bigger organizations, we're talking big data and all of those things, then there are other ways and tools that can be used. But even with a small company, you just need to know your customer and also gather as much data, information, customer insights, and also then you need an analyst to actually analyze that for you and start showing exactly what's going right, what's not going right, and where you can actually improve.
You're listening to the
I
Power
think just to
Sorry, Tumelo, we'll have to save this for after the headlines. We're just going to have a quick break for the headlines, and we'll be back with the Power Boardroom just after this.
Power Business with Tehillah Niselow, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m.
26 minutes before 8, you're listening to the Power Boardroom. The topic tonight, we're speaking about from service to significance, what an exceptional customer experience should truly offer in 2025 and beyond that. For our panel tonight, we're speaking to Chabane, who's the Head of Client Services at MTN, Lungile Mnguni, who's the Business Analysis Advocate and Senior Business Analyst, as well as Tumelo Mothapo, the Head of Operations at Mr. D. He joins us in Cape Town. We're taking your calls on 0861 987 000. WhatsApp's on 083 303 7093. We're also running a poll on our X account at Power FM 987, and we'll be talking about the results of that poll just before the end of the show at 5 to 8 or so. Let's go back now to Tumelo. We just had to take a quick break for the headlines. Thanks for staying with us, and I hope that we can still capture your thoughts, Tumelo.
Yes, before we went on the break, you were talking about data in small companies, and I think one way of getting it right is basically to democratize the access of data and also the tools of analysis. And that's something that we found to be very valuable in our organization, because our management structure is basically to make sure that we achieve high alignment and provide high autonomy, which basically puts employees in the self-managed structure, and they can be able to run with decisions and make decisions based on the data that they've looked into. So this basically empowers everyone to use data to take the right decisions for the customer. And that is obviously driven by our values. And one of our values is we obsess about our customers, and another is we achieve more together. So basically promoting collaboration and ensuring that whatever decision that is made for the customer through the insights that would have been attained from the data.
You spoke earlier, Thandeka, about organizational culture and what's required in order to build this magnificent customer experience. We've just heard there from Tumelo. Was there anything that you wanted to add there?
You know, we really need to relook at how we bring on board frontline, because it's now more about finding curiosity, finding that person who's curious. Because when you're curious, you want to learn. When you learn, it's knowledge. When you have knowledge, as Tumelo said, you've got data at your hands. Data in the right hands, guess what it does? Everybody starts solving. It's no longer a certain department's function. And that is actually the true essence of what makes it work in customer service. Because if you're empowered with the right data in the right hands, the solutions happen in that moment in time. It doesn't wait for a division somewhere in some function to solve it for you, because you've got that at your hands. And so it goes back to, how do you now start looking at the right kind of people to hire? What are the things that you're going to look at? People that are going to make somebody feel good, empathetic. How do you look for empathy in a recruitment while you're recruiting for somebody? Do you give them a trick question that says, I don't know what's the answer going to give you, that tells you whether you're empathetic? How do you hire for curiosity? How do you hire for knowledge? Because that is the future agent, the future fit agent that needs to be engaging with the customer, because they already start solving with the customer in the center, starting from the customer outside and then saying, okay, where I'm at, what I'm doing, how do I make it good for you? So from that perspective, that's where for me, the data is so critical. The tools, the insights, as you said, Lungile, it's so critical. When you have the right insights, it allows you to double click into it. And before you know it, you're solving a puzzle. You know, what I do in my spare time, I love sitting solving puzzles. You know, these car jams or whatever, I solve puzzles while I listen to tartaric bells that is calm whilst I'm solving. But it's that curiosity of unpacking chaos in that instant that makes a difference in being empathetic enough to know what to solve for in that moment.
Yeah, no, I think I could really concur with that, Thandeka. And another thing that we are seeing is that we speak of jobs of the future. I'm sure a few years ago we were not talking customer experience consultants, customer experience specialists, right?
Yes.
But fortunately enough, now in South Africa, we do have customer experience professional associations, right? And this is where other organizations can go to actually really enhance the skills of customer experience. And you touched a bit also on the organizational culture. So for us to be able to deliver the experience that we want to deliver for our customers, it starts internally, right?
Yes.
Are we
Yes.
really upskilling, in terms of the right career paths? Are we not shying away from things that are not so formally recognized? Because I'm sure in our country right now, we do not have degrees that talk to customer experience, but customer experience is playing a big role in how businesses are showing up and how we actually contribute to the growth of this country and the economy as well. So I think it is time that we also just harness the necessary skills, right? And also looking at skills, combining that with technology and also the human element. And therefore it changes organizational cultures and it moves people towards, that open to learning new things and so forth. Because if we're only going to focus on the formal type of education, which is highly accredited, we might just miss on the other small elements of upskilling in terms of the relevant skills that you require for us to deliver these high customer experience services.
That is so true. Who would have thought that today you would be looking for a customer experience design person? What exactly are you looking for? Because it's not like they're designing the technical architecture of something, but in principle they are, because they're designing the empathetic experience of the technical architecture that you ultimately want to deliver from a human perspective for the customer, from an experience. What degree do you study for that?
Exactly.
It's something that we really need to think about as organizations and really re-look at how do we create that succession, as you said, Lungile. If I really want to create a customer-centric environment, what are the key things that need to be accessible? How do I make everyone in the organization excited about insights? How do I harness where majority of the people want to start becoming customer design specialists? What does it take? Do I need a degree? Do I need, hours experience? I mean, if you want to fly a plane, you need hours of flying. So does it mean if I want to become a customer design specialist, I need hours designing? Designing what? Because I'm designing experience.
Tumelo?
Just to maybe something on the contrary, I see a lot of these job titles, customer experience this, customer experience that. And I think my belief is that customer experience is everyone's responsibility in the organization. And there shouldn't be a single custodian of customer experience, but it should live in each and every role.
Yes.
And that should be driven through the culture and also through the values, which is something that we've basically seek to achieve in our organization, where the values speak to the customer, and it's everyone's responsibility to make sure that the customer is placed first, and therefore in that way it's everyone's responsibility to make sure that the experience is at its best for the customer through everything that we do. And the customer could be the end person that basically buys something or acquires services from your particular company, or it could be your colleague, or it could be a supplier. So it's important that it's weaved throughout the organization, because I think once you've got that alignment then and resonance, then you can be able to start seeing the impact in terms of what it has on the eventual customer that buys something or acquires services from your organization.
Yes, Lungile.
Yeah, to me, you've just triggered something in my head right now. I think about the Customer Day, right? We celebrate Customer Day annually, and to your
When's
point,
that? What day is that?
I can now pin it down, but I
Sure.
know we do have a customer day that we experience, that we actually celebrate annually. And I think of a situation whereby CEOs, right, your CFOs of an organization will actually come down to serve their customers, right?
Yes.
And I mean, just to give customers that experience of saying that, you know what, you matter to us, and there is no position within this organization that doesn't really care about customer experience. You know, I would think of a bank if I were to see our CEO coming to, you know, playing a teller for a day, you know, and giving that customer service, or walking down the branch halls just to find out, have you been served, you know, and how are you finding the experience? I think it really speaks to what Tumelo was saying about everyone in the organization playing that role of saying, you know what, customer experience is important to all of us, and we will put in the effort required.
I just want to go to the WhatsApp lines, and all of you have talked about the importance of the human element. We've got a WhatsApp message from Tsepo in Morningside to Thandeka and Tumelo. How are you making sure that digital doesn't mean impersonal? How are you blending automation and the human element? I've been frustrated in the last couple of days, just trying to navigate a chatbot for a piece of admin that I needed to do.
So maybe if I can just start, the more you simplify the end experience you're trying to achieve, using digital, using AI, the quicker the ease to actually experience what you're doing. So how are we using digital to do that? We are looking at how to simplify journeys, interactions, things that were complex, to empower the data and the tools and the insight. So we're looking at that. We are looking at what else is out there from an enabler that allows us to do better. You know, we had a colleague, a discussion today with a colleague back at the office, and we're talking about something called intelligent frontline. What it actually is using an enabler, a tool, to route in digital across different touch points, taking your information and then serving you with what is the best solution for you at that point in time. So it is serving you a solution that is not necessarily a service. It's not. It's an actual function. It's an actual emotion that it renders to you and sends you to the right fit at that point in time, so that your interaction is a positive one. And it's about how to use the digital, the enablers, the tools that allow the routing to actually simplify that, because we've got multiple touch points. You know, as Tumelo said, today, you know, for them, they use a lot of the app versus desktop. But there are other touch points that do still exist, and there are users out there who want to engage in those touch points. How do you make the interaction in digital using AI so that when I next interact with you, I can actually see in my palm your last interaction, what you last did? Because instead of repeating and asking you the same question, I can just pick up from that last interaction because I've got the data in front of me. And so it makes the conversation a lot easier and the solutioning a lot better. And the way to do that does require digitization. It does require tools. It does require AI. And it does actually also look at how do you take things that are cumbersome and are more volume based, simplify them, make it easy, so that quick, as you said, remember, Talia, in the beginning, people want it quickly. I want it now, but I want to have a good experience and I want the quality. So how do you create that? And for me, I think that's the critical thing where digital comes in from a tool perspective. How do I take an IVR environment, you know, typical IVR as a touch point? How do I take intelligent services as a touch point? How do I actually look at current existing platforms where I am getting information about a customer? How do I interweave those like knitting so it makes sense? You know, I'm not talking about knitting that your daughter does the first time they want to do and you look at the stitches and you think, honey, what were you trying to achieve? But how do I knit it so that it is seamless and it's empowering? I think the key critical thing about digital is empowerment. It's ease and it's speed.
Tumelo, how do you knit that all together?
So I think what we've tried to do over the last while is try and keep a lot of the good stuff that already exists and basically incorporate them into the digital experience. So what I mean by that, if we look at our customer services space, many of our competitors have went the route of chatbots. They've killed the phone lines, and basically they don't want humans to interact with other humans. So our phone lines are still on, so you can still call us and basically get that human touch. But in terms of the digital, what we've also looked into doing and are doing quite consistently now is, particularly when it comes to marketing, how do we incorporate the hyperlocal element where if we are running a campaign in a specific area, how do we incorporate the local language so that from a brand perspective, you're speaking the language that your customers speak in that area? And by basically doing those two as an example, we've managed to make sure that we don't make it impersonal. We still keep it personal. And importantly, we still make sure that we cater to the needs of the customer at that point in time.
I've just been informed by the Power Business team the Customer Appreciation Day is on the 16th of May. So that's when we should see, should see CEOs coming downstairs. Another message from Bruce in Katlehong. Hi, Tehillah. Enjoying tonight's Power Boardroom. Quick question. With customer expectations constantly rising, what are South African companies doing to earn loyalty rather than just hoping for it? What's their approach to retaining customers in a market where switching is so easy? Maybe, Lungile, I'll ask you to chat about this. Is there anything that stands out for you in this landscape where companies or entire industries are really just harnessing and doing very well at their customer experience journeys?
Thank you for that question. I really think that what companies are doing right now, they are going to their customers more than just waiting for their customers to come to them. And they're doing this in many ways, right? They are reaching out on social media platforms. If you could just see how our advertising is just became so really interactive, you know, the language that is being used really speaks to the lifestyles, you know. I wouldn't want to say Nando's, but you'll see how Nando's really actually advertise. And I think I'm also seeing it within the banking sector, the communication and the language that is being used. So companies are now going to their customers rather than waiting for the customers to come to them. And I mean, the only way they are able to do this, it is through those data insights, right? And just analyzing exactly what is it that their customers are looking out for, and therefore they are able to go to their customers with those in different channels as well.
A message here from Irene in Winchester. As a marketing student, I find this topic so interesting. Thanks, Irene. So do we. Just curious, what does it actually take behind the scenes to create that effortless, magical customer journey where everything just works? And how do you know when you've nailed it? Yeah, Thandeka, you're laughing. With the slightly pained look on your face.
That is a very good question. And it's people. It's tools, it is architecture, it's technology, it's digitization. At the end of it, it's about how do you create the element that makes you unforgettable. It's not one thing. And the critical part is all those things need people. It's the people who ultimately put the architecture together based on the empathy, the emotion they want to evoke, that lost experience they want to evoke. It's the people who decide the technology to create the ease, the speed. What is the right digitization? What's the right touch point? What's the right interface at each and every interaction and every point? It's the processes. It's the policies. It's the culture. As Lungile said, the culture. If you don't get the culture right, it doesn't matter how many tools and architectures you design and digital solutions or platforms you put in. If you don't get that culture right in every single element, you're not going to get that customer experience right.
I'm interested in the metrics. We'll go to you, Tumelo, in just a moment. Perhaps we can ask you as well the metrics that you use to fully understand whether your customer experience is hitting all the high notes. Tumelo?
Yes, from our side, I mean, I just wanted to touch on two things that you mentioned previously, loyalty and also effortless. I think Thandeka mentioned a lot of the things that we also look at, like SOPs, SLAs, managing exceptions very well. But I think when it comes to loyalty, it's really about listening to your customers and understanding what your customers want. And one thing that we have realized is one of the worst experiences that a customer could have on our platform is place an order on a Friday night and eventually not get your delivery. And we pin that down to a specific problem, which is restaurant delays, which I think everyone is aware happen on a Friday evening. Once we improved those, we started seeing a retention from the customers that essentially would have experienced not getting their food on a Friday night. And the retention basically shot out the roof for those customers because we listened to what their pain point was. And their pain point was, it's Friday night, it's 9 o'clock, you're telling me I'm not getting my food. What do you mean? And that's something that is quite important. But moving on to metrics, one key metric that we look at, which I mentioned earlier on, is happily delivered orders, which basically looks at the number of orders that have been delivered as per the promise that we made from a time perspective to the customer, with everything that the customer wanted, to their expectation, and with a 4 or 5 star rating. That's basically the one key North Star that we look at in terms of what do we need to focus on to improve the customer's experience.
And that is so critical because that talks to the right first time, Tumelo, because when you get it right the first time, it gives the impression and it makes the receiver feel like you listened.
Yeah. No, 100%.
They matter.
Absolutely.
So all of this is in everyday context. Every Friday night, there's obviously a rush for people to get deliveries. What happens when something goes wrong? So perhaps we can talk to you, Thandeka, about during COVID, or there was very much increased usage of the networks, or in the time of a network outage, for example. How do you still continue to deliver a great CX?
You actually go back to simple empathy. You look at the external impact of what COVID had. And the biggest thing that we had as MTN is the ability to connect people, to give you that connected manner in which you can engage when you can't actually physically engage. And so communication, data in your hands, transparency, ease, and also re-educating customers about that connectedness, the tools, making sure that they understand the touch points, the services, where do I go when something goes wrong without actually having to physically walk. So what that actually resulted in is we had to accelerate creating that connectedness with ease, putting the data in the customer's hands because they had the tools. So how do I become unforgettable? Because you're sitting with the tools, you've got the network, you've got the ability to communicate, but how do you make sure that that communication happens via our network, via our tools, using our data, creating that experience? And over that COVID period is how do you do it with empathy?
So empathy is really a big one for you. We'll take this message from Zakia Apelsami. In a world full of AI, it is a great tool to turn data into dialogue, but it's exceptional service that it builds real trust. And it's empowering leaders like Thandeka who makes that transformation real, turning technology into meaningful human impact using the voice of the customer. Zakia. I'm imagining that you know Zakia. I actually just want to go to the results of the poll quickly that we've been running this afternoon. So we asked our audience this question: what should exceptional customer experience look like in 2025? And so these are the results based on the people who voted. I'm just quickly waiting for my page to reload here. But what I saw a little bit earlier, now I'm waiting for my network to come through. We saw 37.5%, so 38% of people believe that price transparency is the most important part of customer experience. They really want to see those prices up front. Human touch, it's 27%. So people really still want human beings there. Personalization, which we're talking about, the algorithms, 25%. And platform consistency at 10.5%. So those are the results. People wanting price transparency, seeing it as the most important. And is that something that's been reflected for you, Lungile?
100%, because as much as we are going on about the amazing AI, it's very important to advocate for responsible use of AI. And one of the things that you look at when we're talking responsible use is transparency. Put it up front. Let the customers know what they're getting into so they can also make a conscious decision. I wanted to add earlier on that now I know when my delivery is not coming through, I've been introduced to Tumelo. And when my desk is not working, I've been introduced to Thandeka. Thank you, Power FM.
So you'll just call them directly. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. It's been such a fascinating discussion on the Power Boardroom this Wednesday evening. We've been looking at the role of exceptional customer service and all the kinds of touch points that are now combining for companies to create this exceptional customer journey, because it's becoming increasingly easier to just switch to a new company. In studio, we've had Thandeka Chabane, who's the head of client services at MTN, Lungile Mnguni, who's the business analysis advocate and a senior business analyst, as well as Tumelo Mothapo, head of operations at Mr. D. Thank you so much, everyone on this panel, for joining us, for enriching the conversation so much.
Power Business was proudly brought to you by MTN. Today, we make moves.